Introduction. The Stoics believed that the foundation of a strong and resilient life is the belief you hold in yourself. This is not the flashy confidence that seeks attention, nor the loud bravado that demands validation or praise. It is quiet, measured, and deeply rooted in daily action. True self-belief emerges from repeated alignment between thought and behavior, from the discipline of keeping your promises to yourself, and from the courage to face difficulty without excuse. It is forged in silence, tested in adversity, and reinforced by consistent effort. Unlike ego, which often depends on comparison and social approval, Stoic self-belief is independent. It does not rise or fall based on what others say, and it does not require recognition to exist. It is an internal authority that becomes a part of your identity. When you live according to your principles, your actions themselves provide the confirmation you need. The world often rewards appearance, charm, or persuasion, but these are fleeting. A Stoic's rewards are internal. They come from alignment, clarity, and the deep understanding that you are reliably grounded in your values. This is a practice, not a theory. Every day presents countless decisions, some small and unnoticed, others loud and demanding. Each is an opportunity to test your self-belief. When you respond with discipline, when your choices reflect your values, even under pressure, you lay the bricks of your internal fortress. Over time, these bricks form a structure that is resilient to external turbulence, unshaken by praise or criticism, anchored firmly in your own integrity. Self-belief is not a state, it is a continuous construction, a process that requires awareness, reflection, and repetition. It is built from observable evidence. You did what you said you would do, you upheld the standards you declared, and you responded with reason rather than impulse. It begins with small, deliberate actions and expands as those actions compound. It is reinforced by reflection and solitude, by confronting discomfort with composure, and by choosing effort over avoidance. By the end of this guide, you will have a roadmap for building this self-belief. 7 Stoic laws that, when practiced consistently, shape your identity from within. Each law offers a principle that, if integrated into daily life, creates clarity, discipline, and unwavering trust in yourself. You will not rely on fleeting emotions, external validation, or motivation alone. Instead, you will cultivate a system that confirms your worth through practice, repetition, and integrity. This is the path of the Stoic, one of measured action, reflective thinking, and deliberate alignment with personal values. It is not easy, but it is reliable, and it leads to a strength that cannot be borrowed or taken away. The journey to unshakable self-belief begins with understanding that the mind is a garden. If left untended, it fills with weeds of fear, doubt, and distraction. If cultivated, it flourishes with reason, clarity, and self-trust. The Stoics treated life as a workshop of the self, each day an opportunity to refine, correct, and strengthen. They knew that no external circumstance could grant confidence. It must be earned internally through discipline, reflection, and alignment. They measured themselves not by appearance, fortune, or praise, but by the consistency between their principles and their actions. True self-belief does not rely on luck, circumstances, or recognition. It is grounded in preparation, conduct, and persistence. As you move through these laws, consider that each day, each interaction, and each decision is a test. You do not need perfection. You need consistency, honesty, and a willingness to face your own shortcomings and adjust. Over time, these small but deliberate actions compound into a character that is steady, resilient, and self-reliant. The Stoic does not demand the world to affirm his strength. He cultivates it silently, deliberately, and patiently in ways that cannot be shaken by noise, chaos, or distraction. Chapter 1. The Law of Inner Authority. The first law, the law of inner authority, teaches that true self-belief comes from the alignment between intention and action. It is the knowledge that your words, principles, and behaviors form a consistent whole. This is not something that can be declared or claimed. It must be proven through repeated practice. Every time you act in accordance with your values, you lay another brick in the foundation of your internal authority. This begins with small, concrete commitments, waking at a set time, following through on promises, resisting impulses, and maintaining honesty in situations where deception or convenience would be easier. For example, if you tell yourself you will respond to a colleague calmly during disagreement, do not rely on the hope that you will remain composed. Instead, deliberately rehearse self-restraint in smaller, low-stakes situations, such as minor irritations or frustrations in traffic. Each success builds evidence for your self-trust. Inner authority grows not from motivation or inspiration, which fluctuate, but from these tangible demonstrations of reliability. By observing your conduct, you begin to see your own integrity reflected back, creating confidence that is independent of approval or recognition. You no longer need to convince yourself of your strength. It is embedded in your actions. Over time, your behavior becomes a consistent reflection of your philosophy. When others encounter a person whose words and actions are aligned, they notice it even if they cannot explain why. That alignment is authority. It is magnetic because it signals reliability. It is a quiet command over oneself, which translates into steadiness in interactions, decisions, and judgment. The second paragraph of this law emphasizes practical application and growth. Begin each day by choosing one or two principles to live by, simple and specific, such as patience, discipline, or integrity. Throughout the day, measure each decision against those principles. In the evening, review honestly. Where did your actions align with your stated values? Where did they diverge? This is not a process of judgment, but of observation. Each deviation is data. Each success is proof. For example, if you commit to remaining calm in conversations, but catch yourself reacting emotionally, note the circumstances and practice in a smaller, controlled scenario. Perhaps you practice a brief moment of pause when interrupted, or a deliberate response to minor criticism. Over weeks and months, these small repetitions compound into a stable pattern of behavior. Your inner authority becomes a framework you can rely on regardless of external chaos. You stop seeking reassurance from others because you have demonstrated your reliability to yourself repeatedly. You begin to see the difference between performance and practice. Your goal is not to appear strong, but to be dependable. Dependability is the bedrock of self-belief. When the mind trusts the self, external pressures lose their power. You move through life with purpose, calm, and clarity. Inner authority allows you to act decisively, navigate conflict with composure, and endure discomfort without collapse. It is a foundation that cannot be shaken by circumstance, criticism, or chance. Each day of alignment reinforces your trust in yourself, creating a gravity of character that anchors your thoughts, actions, and decisions. Chapter 2. The Law of Rational Judgment. The second law, the law of rational judgment, teaches that our perception of reality shapes our experience far more than the events themselves. In Stoicism, external events are considered neutral. Good or bad only exist in how we interpret them. The ability to maintain self-belief relies heavily on exercising rational judgment, separating facts from opinions, cause from emotion, and what is within our control from what is not. For instance, imagine receiving harsh criticism at work. A reactive mind interprets this as an assault on your worth, triggering anxiety, defensiveness, or resentment. A rational mind, however, pauses to consider the facts. The critique may point to actionable improvement areas. It reflects the other person's perspective more than your value, and it is not a judgment on your character or competence. By analyzing the situation dispassionately, you reclaim control over your reaction. Rational judgment allows you to act rather than react to life. It is the ability to evaluate circumstances clearly, to see the underlying causes without distortion, and to make choices grounded in reason rather than emotion. Anecdotes from the Stoics are rich with examples. Epictetus, when faced with a severe disability, did not lament the limitation itself, but focused on what he could control: his attitude, his philosophy, and his responses. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire with constant crises, reminds us in his Meditations that the obstacle itself never forces action. It is our judgment that defines the outcome. This practice of rational evaluation strengthens self-belief because it cultivates clarity. You learn to trust your mind to assess situations accurately, separate fact from fiction, and choose deliberate, effective actions even under pressure. The second paragraph emphasizes practical integration into daily life. Begin by observing the habitual patterns of thought that distort reality: catastrophizing, overgeneralizing, blaming, or personalizing events. Whenever a challenge arises, pause and ask, what is actually happening? What is within my control? What is a projection or assumption? For example, if a friend fails to respond to a message, a reactive mind might spiral into self-doubt or anger, while a rational mind recognizes multiple possibilities. Perhaps they are busy, forgetful, or preoccupied. Your self-belief is maintained because you do not internalize every external fluctuation as a judgment on your worth. To train this law, maintain a journal to separate facts from interpretations. Write the event objectively, then note your emotional or judgmental response, and finally, reframe it through reason. Over time, this habit conditions your mind to default to clarity, reducing anxiety, impulsive reactions, and self-doubt. It is in these repeated practices that self-belief solidifies. You gain confidence not from outcomes, but from the certainty that your judgment is measured, deliberate, and grounded in reality. Rational judgment becomes a shield against manipulation, chaos, and the emotional turbulence of others. By mastering this law, you realize that nothing external can destabilize your self-belief unless you allow your interpretations to dictate your responses. You learn to act with composure, to speak with confidence, and to remain anchored in principle, regardless of fortune, circumstance, or criticism. Chapter 3. The Law of Consistent Effort. The third Stoic law for unwavering self-belief is the law of consistent effort. The Stoics believe that self-belief is not built on occasional bursts of action or random motivation, but through steady, disciplined practice over time. Effort is the bridge between intention and identity. It transforms abstract principles into tangible habits. Consider the metaphor of sculpting. A master sculptor does not reveal the form of a statue in one strike of the chisel. Instead, through repeated, deliberate strikes, he uncovers the shape hidden within the stone. Similarly, consistent effort is the repeated shaping of your character through action, practice, and resilience. This law applies not just to major life challenges, but to the small daily tasks that reveal your dedication. Waking up at the same time, completing a daily workout, committing to a writing or reflection practice, or executing even mundane responsibilities with care are the strokes that define your internal sculpture. When the body and mind are trained through repeated effort, a deep sense of reliability emerges. You begin to trust yourself because your actions reflect a dependable system rather than fluctuating moods. This trust compounds. The act of showing up daily, even when energy is low, sends a signal to your mind that your principles are real and actionable. Over time, these repeated acts of effort create a history, a ledger of consistency that fortifies your confidence even in moments of challenge, chaos, or discomfort. The mind recognizes that it can depend on you, and this recognition is the foundation of self-belief. Practical application of this law is essential for embedding it in daily life. Begin with a small, measurable task and perform it every day without excuse. For instance, a 5-minute morning meditation, 10 push-ups before breakfast, or a short daily reflection in a journal can serve as anchors of consistency. The key is not the magnitude of the effort, but the unwavering repetition. Over time, you can layer more complex or demanding practices onto this base, progressively expanding the capacity of your discipline. Consistent effort also extends to mental training, reading philosophy, studying a language, or solving problems daily. Strengthens your cognitive resilience. The Stoics often practiced voluntary discomfort, cold baths, hunger, physical labor, not as punishment, but as deliberate exposure to challenge, proving that they could endure difficulty without surrender. This principle teaches that even when circumstances are adverse, effort continues to generate internal proof of strength. Every completed task, every moment of discipline becomes evidence. I can act. I can endure. I can maintain my standards. When you integrate consistent effort into your life, your identity is no longer a theory, but a record of action. You stop needing external validation because the pattern itself confirms your reliability. The Stoic understands that effort is not about dramatic achievement. It is about cultivating a system that produces reliability, resilience, and unshakable self-belief through repeated, deliberate action. Chapter 4. The Law of Self-Restraint. The fourth Stoic law for unwavering self-belief is the law of self-restraint. Self-restraint is the disciplined management of your impulses, emotions, and reactions. It is the practice of acting according to reason rather than desire and principle rather than habit. Without restraint, self-belief becomes fragile because it relies on external conditions, approval, comfort, or circumstance, rather than internal stability. Imagine a ship tossed on a stormy sea without a rudder. The ship's movement is dictated by waves, currents, and wind. It cannot maintain course. The same is true for a mind without self-restraint. It is buffeted by external forces and internal impulses, making every decision unreliable. The Stoics observed that most people react to life rather than respond. A cutoff in traffic, a harsh comment, or a sudden delay provokes immediate anger, frustration, or fear, creating a cascade of inconsistent actions. Self-restraint requires pausing between stimulus and response, examining the emotion, and choosing a course aligned with principle. Marcus Aurelius emphasized that true power lies in the mind, and it is exercised in moments when impulses arise. By training yourself to observe urges, contain emotional reactions, and moderate responses, you build a core of internal authority that cannot be shaken by circumstance. Restraint is not suppression, it is mastery. It ensures that your actions reflect your values rather than passing moods, forming a consistent internal reference point. This repeated practice in everyday life, staying calm when insulted, resisting overindulgence, or withholding a reactive comment, reinforces the habit and fortifies the trust you place in yourself. Practical application of self-restraint begins with small, deliberate acts repeated daily to reinforce control. For example, you might pause before responding to a text that provokes irritation. Take a moment to breathe before reacting in a heated discussion, or delay gratification by waiting to eat. Check your phone, or indulge in leisure until a necessary task is completed. These micro-practices train the mind to tolerate discomfort and reduce reactivity over time. Ancient Stoics, such as Seneca, often engaged in voluntary discomfort, fasting, cold baths, or minimalist living, not to punish themselves, but to cultivate endurance and self-governance. This principle also extends to speech. Speaking deliberately, avoiding gossip or impulsive remarks, and choosing silence over unnecessary commentary strengthens both mental clarity and social composure. Self-restraint, practiced consistently, produces a presence of calm authority that others notice even if they cannot articulate it. Over weeks and months, these practices create a mental ledger. Each moment of measured response reinforces the proof that you can be relied upon to act with reason rather than impulse. Your mind learns that emotions are tools to be directed, not commands to be obeyed. The Stoic knows that restraint allows freedom, freedom from panic, from reactive behaviors, and from the chaos of an uncontrolled inner life. The result is an inner landscape where self-belief does not depend on circumstances, approval, or luck. It is rooted in the consistent, disciplined exercise of personal mastery. Chapter 5. The Law of Emotional Responsibility. The fifth Stoic law for unwavering self-belief is the law of emotional responsibility. This law teaches that you are fully accountable for your emotional responses and that your inner state is shaped by your judgments, not by external events. Too often, people assign blame for their feelings to others, a rude comment, a missed opportunity, a delay, or criticism, and believe that these events cause anger, anxiety, or disappointment. The Stoics understood that this belief surrenders control to the outside world, leaving the mind reactive and unstable. Epictetus famously wrote that it's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. When emotional responsibility is absent, life becomes a chain of responses to circumstances, leaving one dependent on fortune, other people's behavior, or fleeting conditions. By contrast, embracing emotional responsibility means seeing emotions as signals rather than instructions, analyzing their origin, and choosing how to act in accordance with reason and principle. For example, if someone criticizes you harshly at work, the initial sting is a natural emotional reaction, but the Stoic pauses, separates fact from interpretation, and decides whether the critique contains truth or is merely noise. By practicing this separation repeatedly, your internal state becomes self-generated and self-governed. Emotional responsibility strengthens self-belief because it proves to you that you can remain grounded, calm, and decisive regardless of external pressure, reinforcing the internal narrative that you are reliable under all conditions. Practically applying emotional responsibility involves structured reflection and deliberate pause. One approach is to create a reaction log. When a strong emotion arises, anger, fear, envy, write down the triggering event, the immediate interpretation you made, the emotion it produced, and the action you took or withheld. Over time, patterns emerge, showing how certain judgments lead to unnecessary distress. You can then consciously choose to reframe these judgments before the emotion spirals. For instance, fear of public speaking may arise not from the act itself, but from an imagined judgment that you will fail or look foolish. By separating the fact, speaking in front of people, from the story your mind invents, you regain control and act with reason. Similarly, emotional responsibility extends to positive emotions, ensuring gratitude, joy, or enthusiasm are genuine reflections of value rather than fleeting reactions to circumstance. Ancient Stoics often used visualization and mental rehearsal to anticipate difficult encounters, observing their potential emotional responses and practicing measured reactions in advance. This method trains the mind to respond rather than react, producing a quiet confidence that others sense even without seeing its foundation. Over time, emotional responsibility becomes automatic. Your mind no longer drifts with every disturbance, your reactions are deliberate, and your self-belief becomes a stable, self-sustaining force because it is continuously reinforced by evidence of disciplined management of your inner life. Through repeated practice, that your emotions will not dictate your behavior. They will inform your reasoned action. Chapter 6. The Law of Solitude and Inner Clarity. The sixth Stoic law for unwavering self-belief is the law of solitude and inner clarity. This principle teaches that time spent alone, away from distractions, is essential to understanding yourself and strengthening your judgment. Solitude is not a withdrawal from life, but a deliberate retreat to inspect the mind and clarify values without interference. Marcus Aurelius often emphasized the importance of retreating inward to reflect, reminding himself that strength comes from preparation, not reaction. In modern terms, solitude allows us to filter the noise of social media, constant messaging, and the opinions of others that shape our choices unconsciously. Without such moments, our thoughts are pulled outward, and our actions are influenced more by habit, impulse, or external pressure than by intentional principle. Solitude creates a space where the mind can slow down, detect contradictions in thought, and identify what truly matters. For example, if you notice recurring frustration or doubt, sitting quietly with your thoughts allows you to dissect the root causes. Are these feelings stemming from your expectations, from unmet desires, or from unrealistic comparisons? This process turns distraction into reflection and clarifies which parts of your life require alignment. Over time, solitude trains the mind to hold focus, think clearly under pressure, and observe patterns in both emotions and behavior, reinforcing a self-belief that comes not from external validation, but from intimate knowledge of one's own mind and principles. Practically, applying solitude can be done in small daily rituals. Start with 15 to 30 minutes each day of uninterrupted stillness. Sit somewhere quiet, remove devices, and observe your thoughts without attempting to suppress them. Journaling during this period is particularly effective. Write down recurring thoughts, emotional reactions, or decisions that left you unsettled. By tracking these patterns, you gain insight into which judgments are distorted and which are aligned with your values. Solitude also allows for strategic mental rehearsal. Imagine challenging situations before they occur, anticipate your emotional responses, and plan measured reactions. For instance, before a difficult meeting, you might predict moments of tension and rehearse remaining calm, patient, and principled. Over weeks, this practice trains mental discipline. You start noticing when your actions drift from your intentions and can course correct before consequences arise. The key is consistency. Even short, focused periods of reflection daily compound over time, creating clarity that becomes second nature. This clarity forms the backbone of self-belief. When the mind has been trained in quiet observation, judgment becomes precise, responses become deliberate, and actions are aligned with principles rather than impulse. The Stoic becomes difficult to shake because internal guidance is stronger than external turbulence, and confidence grows from knowing that your mind is clear, your judgments deliberate, and your choices anchored in reason. Chapter 7. The Law of Daily Alignment. The seventh Stoic law for unwavering self-belief is the law of daily alignment. This principle emphasizes that self-belief is not a single, isolated decision, but the continuous practice of aligning your actions with your values every day. The Stoic does not leave life to chance. He defines what matters most and ensures that his daily behavior reflects those principles. Without alignment, even the most disciplined person can falter, as energy scatters and doubt grows when actions contradict stated intentions. Think of alignment as the bridge between thought and conduct. A person may value honesty, but if they habitually avoid difficult conversations or excuse minor lies, the value is eroded in practice. Likewise, valuing health without consistent effort, exercise, sleep, nutrition, means the principle exists only in thought, not in life. Daily alignment requires conscious decision-making at every level, from seemingly trivial choices like responding patiently to an email or refraining from gossip, to major life actions like negotiating fairly or enduring personal hardship without complaint. Each action, no matter how small, either reinforces or undermines the internal sense of integrity. Over time, this repetition produces a quiet yet undeniable proof of self-belief. When your life becomes a reflection of your principles, you no longer rely on others' approval to define who you are. Your behavior becomes the evidence, and that evidence builds an unshakable internal foundation. To practice daily alignment, structure your day with intention and review. Begin each morning by clearly stating one or two principles you intend to live by, such as patience, courage, or clarity in decision-making. Mentally rehearse how you might encounter challenges to these principles and how you will respond. During the day, treat each task, interaction, and decision as an opportunity to confirm your alignment. For example, if your principle is discipline, honor your commitments even when inconvenient. If it is courage, face uncomfortable truths or necessary conflicts without avoidance. In the evening, conduct a quiet reflection. Review what choices aligned with your principles and where drift occurred. Be honest with yourself and record your observations. Ask yourself, Did my actions today match my stated values? Where did I compromise? Where can I improve tomorrow? Over weeks and months, this cycle forms a robust feedback loop, producing a life where values are inseparable from action. This daily practice builds resilience against external chaos. When circumstances are unpredictable, your internal compass remains true. Self-belief grows naturally from this rhythm. It is no longer dependent on motivation, praise, or circumstance. Instead, it is rooted in the visible, repeated evidence of your choices. You have not merely declared your principles, you have lived them, and in that living, certainty, strength, and unwavering belief in yourself emerge as an enduring force, shaping both your identity and the world you interact with. Epilogue: Living the Stoic Life. The journey of self-belief is continuous. It is not a goal you reach once and forget. It is a practice you engage in every day. Even when life becomes chaotic, even when the world tests you with uncertainty, the Stoic remains anchored. Your discipline becomes a shield. Your clarity becomes a compass. Your inner authority becomes your home. Remember, the laws of self-belief are not theoretical. They are lived. Each pause before reacting, each deliberate choice, each consistent effort, each period of solitude. These actions accumulate into a mind that can be trusted, a life that is aligned, and a presence that is unshakable. The Stoic does not seek to dominate others or to appear strong. Strength is measured internally through the harmony of thought, word, and action. Confidence is earned quietly, through practice, through reflection, and through perseverance. In time, you will notice a subtle but profound change. You no longer chase approval. You no longer react automatically. You no longer doubt your capacity to endure or to act rightly. Your life becomes a reflection of your values, and your belief in yourself is proven, not claimed. This is the essence of Stoicism: not to escape difficulty, not to feel superior, but to build an unshakable foundation that carries you steadily through life. Carry this with you daily. Let each sunrise remind you of your principles. Let each evening remind you of your alignment. Through repetition, reflection, and discipline, self-belief becomes your natural state. You do not need applause, recognition, or validation. You need only your principles, your effort, and your awareness. Everything else is secondary. This is the path. This is the practice. This is how the Stoic stands firm in a world that constantly shifts. Live it. Practice it. Trust yourself.